Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and last night we held another GD01 triple window box for the Gundam card game. 64 players, 6 rounds of Swiss into this top 8 that we see here today. And a couple things before we get started. First, if you guys are new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe. We make a lot of content for the Gundam card game. We don't want you guys to miss it. Also, if you guys want to see any of the deck lists that we talked about today, or for any other events that we've been able to collect for, make sure to find it on Eggman Events, which is linked in the description. Also, while you're down there, there is a link to the live stream that I did with Risu, so check that out if you haven't either. This is your last chance to see the finals before you see who won it from the results. And then lastly, big shouts to our sponsor for the event, EXP Share Collectibles, link in the description as well if you guys want to check them out. They've got a lot of imported cards and decks and packs and stuff, including resources for the Gundam card game, which you can use different language resources in this game, so you can get some Chinese or Japanese resources and use them for tournament legal decks, which is really cool. So thank you again for their support, and make sure to check them out again. But jumping on into it, in this top 8 we do have 3 copies of the blue and red Cyber-Newtype, 2 copies of Zeon Aggro blue-green, 1 copy of a blue-green Earth Federation Aggro, 1 of the green and white Wing Zeros, and 1 copy of blue and white unicorn blockers. So still a lot of different decks that are viable in this meta, even though it's set 1, right? We also do have 4 of the possible 6 color combinations, excluding monotypes, in this too. So blue green taking 3 spots, blue red taking 3 spots, and then 1 of both the green white as well as the blue white there. We also do have the total color breakdown. So we did have 19 on green and white, 14 on blue and green, 13 on blue and red, 13 on the blue and white, and then also the 3 on green red and 2 on green white. So this is kind of what I've been seeing too. I do think that white and red is probably the worst color combination, and green and red, I know a lot of people believe in it. I see it pretty often that people are like, oh, my green red Zeon Aggro deck is undefeated, or we're doing really well at locals. And I'm not denying that's not the truth, but it is something that I haven't been seeing as much success at larger events like these ones. So I do think that there is some possibilities for all color combinations that exist in the card game right now, but it is definitely like showed that a lot less people are on green red and red white as well. But outside of that, most people, a pretty evenish split across the other 4 color combinations, which is really cool too. So we are going to go over the top placing list for each of these combinations. We're actually just going to look at all of the top 8. We also do have 2 additional bubble deck lists as well, for just kind of some variations for some of the other archetypes that exist. So again, if you guys want to check that out, we can have it linked in the description on Eggman Events. And let's go to our first place build. So we do have first place for our Zeon Aggro. So we've got Gerome with their build of the deck. And this one's a little bit different from what I've been seeing, across the way. I do know that if I was to say what I think the 2 strongest decks are right now, I think that blue-green aggro and blue-red aggro are both pretty established. I think it's also really interesting to see that, at the beginning of the format, we had a lot more like control decks, and that aggro was pretty slow to start. But now we've seen a lot of just higher-paced, aggressive decks that have been kind of popping out in the last couple weeks. So kind of like the opposite of what I usually expect from card games. Normally, like aggro decks do really well in the first couple weeks, and then control decks usually kind of rein them in towards the second half of the meta or something like that. But for this one, it's been a bit of a slow start for the aggressive decks, but now that they're here, they get a lot of advantage. So this one's definitely more on the Zeon side, using cards like the Char Zaku 2 as well as the Char Zaku 2 from GD01. So each one of those. There's no Char's Gaogoog in this build either, which I think is really interesting. We do have a split of 4/4 for Char as well as Amuro, and then we do have just pretty much the low to the ground units, right? Our Dopper Zaku 1, Jim Gun Tank Zaku 2 is both the 2/2 as well as the 1/2 that turns into a 3/2 on aggression. So, and then there is like a little bit of decisions for the bases. We are playing 3 copies of the Corsica base, which I really do like this card, I think right now. I think it's something that's really strong. A 4/2 token that you get active that also, I know that playing 3 for this is a little bit expensive, but you still at least get like a card draw off your shields by using this, which is really nice. And then also late game, and you will see this throughout the tournament, having a 1/1, 2 1/1s that come out active is really strong. It just means that if your opponent doesn't have a base, you really get to pressure their shields with those, and it's sometimes like a bit difficult for some decks to really answer those cards. So that's been really good. We also do have 1 copy of the white base and then 2 copies of Siege Ploy. I was pretty low on this card at the beginning of this format. format, but Amuro Ray has definitely been one of the strongest cards in the game currently, and so having 2 additional copies of Amuro is really nice. Obviously, I think Amuro is just strictly better than this card, but it's such a good card that having 2 lesser copies of it is still really strong. So this can be also be used defensively. This also has a pretty relevant burst. I think the burst of adding Amuro to your hands is a little bit better, but being able to use this to sometimes like win or like get into a spot where you don't lose is really nice, right? We've got essentially kind of 6 disruption bursts, right? We have the 2 siege ploys and then the 4 bases, so that can get you into a spot where if your opponent was expecting to win, maybe you'd have like 1 more turn than they were expecting, which is really strong. So this is Jerome's list, and then we also do have the list here from Chris, which is a little bit more of the list that I'm more used to. I think the biggest difference is adding the Char's Galgoog. I do think this card is really strong, but it's not necessarily like the best card in the deck. Obviously, we don't need to run it for success because Gerome was running 0 copies of it, but having a card that's just very easily a discard 1, get a pilot from your trash is really nice, right? 6 AP high maneuver just gets rid of any base in the game right now, unless they have any like AP manipulation, but this has been really strong, I think, for closing out games a lot of the time. So other than that, we're playing, I think, the standard Zeon stuff. We're also adding a couple copies of Goof. Being able to just get another token is really strong. Using the Fall Mel instead of the Corsica base is strong too. Having a 3/1 is rested is not as good as a 4/2 active, but it's something between a cost of 3 and a cost of 2, right? So I do think Fall Mel costing 2 does help you play it a little bit earlier sometimes, but I still am like a really big fan of Corsica base. So not much more here, but here is the builds of the green and blue Zeon aggro. And then to kind of wrap up our green and blue, we also do have Nick's version of the Earth Federation. I think aggro is kind of the way, right? We're not playing any of the Shars. We do have a couple of Zeon units, but that's mostly just because of the what their stat lines are, not really their traits in general. So Nick's list got second place and was able to play against Gerome in the finals, and spoilers, got second place, but I think was a really close game and kind of showed off the strengths of both these kind of different packages for it. So the only other things I'd say, so we do take advantage of Jigen being able to be a 1 cost very easily. 1 cost 2/3 is pretty nice. We're already a deck that plays a lot of these 1 cost 2/2s, so having additional copies for a pretty trivial cost, right? If you have 2 or more Earth Federation units in play, getting that cost -1 is fine. When we have the GM, the gun tank, the G fighter, gun cannon, Rizel, Angsha, and the Gundam itself, so all of that is really handy. We are playing the Rizel. We're playing just 1 copy of the Angsha. I still think that the Gundam is a super strong card, but we're also kind of breaking into this top end where we do have 2 copies of the Shenlong from GD01, as well as the level 4 from GD01 and the level 5 from GD01 as well, both having these breach effects, both having some ways to just get some more pressure. Chong Wu-Fei for the Shenlong Gundam is really great, right? I think one of the best cards in the game right now, or most used cards, is the Gundam Ilfrit, so having just a way to take advantage of that is good. I think this is a deck that really does well against any kind of like green-white or blue-white decks. Being able to just interact with their blockers for free and aggressively is very strong. I think it's a little bit worse against additional aggro decks, right? Because you are giving up a little bit of your aggro push for being able to get over blockers a little bit more. But I think this is a really solid build. I think that there is just a lot of ways to play green and blue. I do think like Amuro and Gundam are 2 of the best cards in the game right now, so they are really used in both these decks. But it was a really cool build, and congratulations to Nick for their second place with it. Next up, we've got our Cyber-Newtype. So we've got Michael as well as Kalvin and Joshua. Kalvin and Joshua are running the exact same cards, but with slightly different ratios. But we do also have Michael, who all of them were X1. Technically, Michael got the highest placing in Swiss between them, but you can definitely see that there are some very similar builds across this. So I think Michael is probably the most unique one that I've seen in a minute between the ones that have topped at Gen Con and now. I'd say that the builds here between Kalvin and Joshua are definitely reminiscent of Ben Ferris's and Imperial's finish for the the first and last event, right? Running the Battle of Aces, having like the secret, the ratios for their Gundams and their Kshatriyas, right? Nothing too outrageous, right? I would say that both these are generally like, these are the cards that you play. You can change the ratios a little bit, but this is probably like a standardish 50 between both these. And then this build is running a couple of additional cards. So we are playing more of the same amount of 2/1s. We are just splitting between the Zaku Mariner and the Jin. We are playing the Unicorn Gundam O2 Banshee Unicorn mode, which we do get to use this as another way to just rest something with a cost of 3 or less. It also does have the Cyber-Newtype trait for the link, so you can use Marita for this. You can be a 6/4 that also rests something, which HP 3 or less, and get the ping, which is really nice. We do also have like the Corsica base and the Vesalius having a 3/3 split, and then the Battle of Aces at 3 and the Show of Resolve at 4. So this one's a little bit more, I would say, like mid-range, maybe not as low to the ground aggro. We do have a lot of like the lower end cards, but we do also have like a lot of like the more value cards, I guess is the way to say it. So we are running like only one Kshatriya, right? I do think this card's sometimes hit or miss, but being able to get a rest that lets you just get like another ping into something or good trade is really, really nice. Resting, I think, has been really strong conventionally in this game so far. And then the top end still like Banshee as well as the Kshatriya have been really, really strong. So I do think like Battle of Aces at 3 and Show Resolve at 4 is maybe a little bit clunky at times. I could definitely see not having any units left to play at some times, but I do really, again, I really do like Corsica base if you're playing some of these more aggressive builds, and then Vesalius at 3 copies as well. So not much more to say, but congratulations to all of our top 8 Cyber-Newtype blue-red decks. Next up, we've got Wing. So we got Simon's version of the deck here, and I would say this is kind of the mildly more standard build. I think there's been some pretty different packages for the deck in general. This is more of a blocker build, and I would say even more of like a Kira and like a Perfect Strike kind of build, right? We're not running Ale Strike in this deck in particular, and I think most of the reason for it is that the 4 cost for Ale is a little bit expensive in some spots, but being able to have like Perfect Strike Gundam with like Kira or Launcher Strike with Kira can be really strong in its own way. The fact that these cards also have 4 HP is really nice because it does get out of the Wing 0 effect. So all of these are helpful. We are also playing Striker Pack. We've got a single copy of the Unforeseen Incident. All of these cards I think are really good for what this deck wants to do. So since we're running a little bit more blockers than usual, I think we are justified for playing a couple copies of the Archangel to having a 2/2 split with the Desert base. And then we do have like the Overflowing Affection, the One Path to Victory or Defeat, and the rest of the top end. So I'm still a big believer of Wing Gundam at 4 copies, but I know a lot of people have been playing it at 3 copies so far. So it's up to you, 3 or 4 copies, but both have been really, really strong. So this is the list here from Simon, who's able to get into top 8. You also do have Sos, our strongest wizard, with their current build of the deck too, going X2 as well, and getting into the top 16. So running more of like the build with the Wu Fei. So having like the Shenlong Gundam, I think is strong for being able to get some additional pressure and some like blocker pops. Specifically Ilfrit again has been really strong in this meta, so being able to get rid of it for free on attack is really, really nice. Having Shang Wu Fei also just being an Operation Meteor card, right? We will almost never miss with the Path to Victory or Defeat when we do have 3 copies of Shenlong as well as the 2 copies of Wu Fei, and we do have a 4/4 split of our Death Scythe and Wing Gundam, and then the Wing Gundam 0 at 3 copies. So I know he's been playing this deck for quite a bit, especially with these ratios, and has been doing really well at locals here in LA. So congrats to Sos with their build as well, with more of this like Wu Fei breach stuff for the Wing 0 stuff. And then to wrap it up, we've got 2 blue and white decks. We've got Boris with their top 8 version of, I call this blue-white unicorn blockers. I know that there's like a lot of discussion of what's a unicorn blocker deck, what's a Freedom Gundam blocker deck. When do we just say like it's blue-white good stuff with unicorn at the top, right? There's a lot of ways to kind of interpret a lot of these blue and white decks right now, just because they're so flexible in their design a lot of the time. So again, there are just a lot of great cards. This is definitely a really personalized list from Boris too. We see a lot of one-ofs with 1 copy of the Rizal. We do have 1 copy of the Perfect Strike. We also do have 2 copies of the Launcher Strike Gundam, which this has been really interesting to see this card so popular this week, when traditionally it's been like, I think, mildly popular, right? It was really popular in the beta when we didn't have as many cards in our card pool, but now that we're in the full release, I've been seeing more and more people add a couple copies of this one in particular, which is interesting. I still am a big believer of Unicorn Gundam, especially since like Bondager Links, it's just +2/+2 vanilla is still a really good pilot stat, especially when blue-white has so many just when paired effects. They're so like there's obviously like the pilot that you're supposed to use, but being able to be like, you know what, I'm just going to put Boundager into Ale Strike. We're a 6/6 blocker now that popped bump something with 4 less HP back to my opponent's hand. I'm not upset about that. That's really, really strong. So that does help the deck. Gundam and Amuro, I think 4 and 4 It's just so good. There's so many games where I'm like, man, this just buys me like the early game by itself, and it can stay around a shocking long amount of time if your opponent doesn't have like a hard out for it, because that repair too just really sneaks up on you a lot of the time. So it's been really strong. I've been a really big fan of the cards and the deck in general, and yeah, it's in a really good spot. So other than that, we run our draw cards, right? 4 copies of Overflowing Affection, 3 copies of Show of Resolve, and the Unforeseen Incident there. So I do think that blue white's been probably a little bit less popular than usual, but it has, I think a lot of chance if we're playing a lot of these greedy aggro decks. If you are able to use this in your advantage to be able to interact with your opponent a lot, I think you are, you do have a chance to defend yourself against some of these aggressive decks. So here's the build from Boris. Congratulations for the top 8. And to wrap it up, we do have Matthew's version of the kind of, I would say, more freedom blockers with a little bit of kind of like an academy focus too. So this is a top 16 finish, was a 4-2. So did bubble out a top 8 with tiebreakers, but could get there with the record. Generally speaking, the kind of new cards are different cards we're adding are one, the Choo Choo's Demi Trainer. This just being an additional draw 1, discard 1 is nice. I do think there's a lot of ways that decks are just kind of pinging 1 damage too. So having only 1 HP is a little bit, I think, scary, but you can get that more consistency. I do like it more than Zort. I'll be honest. I've been really disliking Zort lately. I think the card has been, the early block is really nice, but late game, it just feels so dead in hand. You really wish that it can attack. So, subbing this for Zwart, I think is really good in the late game, so it can help you there. We do also have like the, Rizel, Gundam, Ailstrike. We also do have the Aerial Rebuild, which this is definitely a card that I've been trying to test out a little bit more lately. I think having a way to reuse our blockers, or not our blockers, our commands is great. It's just a great when paired effect. When we just want to try to outvalue our opponent. We're playing 2 striker packs, 2 show resolves, 4 copies of Overflowing, and then the Unforeseen Incident. All of these can be great for being able to get back for rebuild, right? If this just said like draw 1, I think that's, which essentially it is great, but draw 1 into Overflowing, you can also like rebuild, attack with Mercury, get the Overflowing back, and then get the 1 resource back to play the Overflowing. That's just really good cycle. That's just really good consistency. So it is a bit of a shame that this is only, a 6 attack with Soletta, but we can definitely make it a 7 attack with either Amro or Kira, which is nice, and we still get the when paired effect, which is really helpful as well. So other than that, I think this deck is in a really fun spot. I've definitely been testing kind of blue-white, more of an aerial focus myself too, and I do think it has a lot of potential in this format as well. So here's the build here from Matthew, and that's going to be it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm really enjoying this game. I've been playing a lot, like probably too much of it, if I'm being super honest. I've been having a lot of fun, and even though we're like a couple weeks into this meta, it still feels fresh. It still feels like there's a lot of kind of like, territory to explore, and honestly, everyone kind of has a lot of their own different builds, which is really fun to see as well. So, and anyways, that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I do want to thank again Risu for being my co-commentator for it, and CJ for judging the event. I would not be able to run these without them, and I'm looking forward to the next one too, which we're going to be announcing probably this week, so be on the lookout for it. But that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.